The streets of Lansing, Illinois were no playground. They were battlegrounds where my childhood lessons were etched with every bruise and every desperate breath. My father, with his cruel hand, hammered resilience into me, while my mother's silence became my teacher in self-reliance. By the time I turned 15, I wasn't just surviving, I was strategizing, navigating the unforgiving maze of Chicago's South Side. Here, where ambition often outpaced legality, I learned to seize opportunities others wouldn't dare touch. It was a crucible, forging the steel I'd need for the battles life had yet to unleash. Years later, I channeled that hard-won grit into building legitimate ventures, rental properties, vending services, and a coin exchange business spanning Chicago and northern Indiana. Financially, I thrived. But life has a way of balancing the scales. While my businesses flourished, my marriage to Lillian, a union that had once seemed like the perfect dream, began to crack under the weight of irreconcilable differences. Her ambition, relentless and dazzling, collided with my desire for simplicity, sparking betrayals that would ignite a storm neither of us could contain. When the courts handed down their decision, it felt like my execution. $2,000 in alimony, $1,000 in child support. The mortgage, health insurance, everything fell squarely on me, pushing my financial obligations to a staggering $6,500 a month. My ex-wife, Lily, who had built her career as a paralegal with the rumored help of her clandestine affairs, had outmaneuvered me at every turn. It wasn't justice, it was theater. Her firm's lawyers pulling the strings while I stood as the hapless puppet. But if the system thought I'd crumble, it didn't know me. I wasn't just Kurt D'Angelo, a man beaten by life's trials. I was forged by Lansing streets, tempered in the fires of survival. And if there was one thing I had learned, it was how to turn the tables. For Regina, my daughter, my pride, and my greatest joy, I would endure anything. She deserved better than this circus. Even when she bravely told the judge she wanted to live with me, her voice trembling with hope, she was dismissed with a cold, indifferent wave. It was another slap in the face. Yet, my resolve hardened with every blow. Regina would be protected no matter the cost. As for Lily, she had manipulated the system to bleed me dry, but she hadn't anticipated one thing: I was about to repay her in kind. The first move in my game? A spousal support payment she'd never forget. Coins, thousands of them, delivered to her pristine marble floor via an armored truck. Her screams echoed as the metallic symphony poured out, the sound a prelude to the reckoning yet to come. When Lily retaliated with a subpoena, served with all the flair her lawyer could muster, it was just another challenge. Courtroom battles were nothing new, and I had spent my life adapting, evolving. My plans would not falter. They would crescendo. As I sat with Regina over lunch that week, she voiced her anger and heartbreak. "Mom doesn't deserve anything," she said with a maturity that both shattered and fortified me. I promised her then, with all the conviction I could muster, that I would fight, not with violence as she feared, but with the unyielding resolve of a man who refused to be broken. By the time court day arrived, I was ready. As Lily sneered across the aisle, I met her gaze with unflinching calm. She might think this was her stage, but I was rewriting the script. The judge, who had already shown his bias, didn't intimidate me. If the system was rigged, then I would simply outplay it. And so began a battle not of laws, but of wills, a storm of accusations, counter-arguments, and strategies, where every move was a calculated step toward reclaiming what was mine. This wasn't the end of my story. It was only the beginning. The courtroom buzzed with tension as the judge made his ruling. "Payments will be made by check," he declared, his tone final. My lawyer, however, wasn't about to let it go without a fight. "Your Honor," he began, his voice firm yet polite, "the Chicago Police Department, also a part of the legal system, accepts only cash or card for fines. If they can refuse checks, why can't my client pay in legal tender? The judge hesitated, caught off guard by the logic. He shifted uncomfortably in his seat, then retorted, "This is my court, and what I say goes." His embarrassment was evident, but his bias even more so. Across the aisle, I saw Lily and her lawyer exchange uneasy glances. They were scrambling now, and that knowledge fueled the fire inside me. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. I stood, my anger boiling over as I glared at the judge. "You call this justice?" I demanded, my voice cutting through the room like a blade. "Or are you just here to please my wife's law firm? What, was she a strong for you too?" The judge's face turned crimson as his temper exploded. "Mr. D'Angelo, you're in contempt of court," he bellowed. 6 months in Cook County Jail, unless you apologize and comply with my conditions. Without missing a beat, I shot back, "Who are you? The king of this kangaroo court?" His shock was palpable as he barked orders to the bailiff. "Take him into custody." As the bailiff escorted me out, I turned to Lily, who stood frozen in place. "Good luck getting your money now, witch," I sneered. Her expression flickered between rage and disbelief. She had no idea the storm I was about to unleash. The clang of metal bars echoed as I was processed in the county jail, strip-searched, fingerprinted, and assigned a cell. 2 guards tried to intimidate me, asking why I disrespected the judge. I didn't flinch. At 6 feet 4 inches and 255 pounds of solid muscle, years of hard labor had made me strong, and my time in juvie had long since stripped me of fear. The next day, I kept to myself in the yard, watching everything from the shadows. During the evening meal, a familiar voice broke through the din. "Tex!" it called. I turned to see Ringer, an old friend from my youth. We embraced briefly, drawing curious glances from the other inmates. "What are you doing here?" he asked, amusement lacing his voice. "Told a judge he's an a-hole," I replied flatly. Ringer laughed. "How long they give you?" 6 months, unless I apologize, which isn't happening. We found a quiet corner to catch up. Ringer knew me well, especially my knack for revenge. As I explained the mess with Lily, her lawyer friends, and the corrupt judge, his expression darkened. "They'll regret crossing you," I vowed. "You always had a plan, Tex," he said, nodding knowingly. "Need help?" "Maybe," I replied, my tone measured. "But for now, just having you here is enough." Ringer grinned. "You know I've got your back." For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a sliver of control return. That night, lying on my bunk, I reflected on the journey that had led me here. My rough childhood, shaped by my father's abuse and my mother's inaction, had forged my resilience. I had escaped to the streets, finding others like me, kids trying to survive. We weren't a gang, but our petty crimes eventually got me locked up. Strangely, that experience became my turning point, forcing me to rethink my choices and build a future. By age 20, I had saved enough to buy my first foreclosed house, the first of many I would renovate and rent out. At 22, I met Lily in a club, her small-town charm and bright outlook a stark contrast to the life I'd known. Within a year, we were married, and soon after, Regina was born. Life seemed perfect, at least on the surface. But Lily's ambitions outgrew our modest life. Her job at the law firm brought a hunger for expensive clothes, jewelry, and status, things I never cared for. Over time, her arrogance and disdain for our simpler roots drove a wedge between us. She pressured me to move to a more upscale neighborhood, a decision I regretted the moment we arrived. The fancy house became a gilded cage, and our marriage began to unravel. I should have seen it coming, but the night I caught her at that club confirmed everything. Watching her dance provocatively, overhearing men bragging about their exploits with her, it was the moment my love for her turned to stone. That night I decided no more. Regina and I would leave, and Lily could have her new life. As I lay in the dim light of my cell, the pieces of my plan began to fall into place. The judge, the lawyers, and Lily, they thought they had the upper hand. But I was just getting started. They had underestimated me, and soon they would realize their mistake. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my daughter's future. And nothing, not jail, not corrupt judges, not even Lily's lies, would stop me. "Did Ken tell you what they did to me?" I asked, my voice calm but laced with a quiet fury. He nodded, his expression hardening. "Return the favor," I said coldly. "Hit their loved ones. No DNA evidence. Use Steely Dan or his flexible cousins." Ken understood instantly, his jaw tightening. "Do it all at the same time, and make sure they hear. Don't mess with Texas." "I'll get my guys," he said firmly, before leaving with determination. A week later, I noticed changes in the prison's rhythm. 2 guards were mysteriously absent, and one of the 6 inmates who had targeted me seemed visibly distraught. My suspicions were confirmed. The plan had been executed. Soon enough, the other inmates started calling me Tex, and the angry stares from the 6 confirmed that my message had been received loud and clear. One of them couldn't hold his rage any longer and confronted me during yard time. Before I could respond, Ringer and his group closed in, forming a wall of protection around me. "You're a piece of crap," the man spat. "My girlfriend dumped me. She said she didn't want to risk getting hurt and mentioned, 'Don't mess with Texas.'" Smirking, I leaned in slightly. "Sounds like solid advice. Now your women know what it feels like. You hurt me, I hurt the people you care about. Next time," I added, my tone darkening, "it'll be your mother." The color drained from his face, and he retreated to his group, subdued. Later, 2 guards cornered me in a quiet corridor, their expressions menacing. "You think you're untouchable?" one sneered. "We'll make your life miserable." I didn't flinch. "Then I guess your wives better get used to some new attention," I said coldly. One of the guards snapped, shoving me against the wall and throwing punches in full view of the prisoners and cameras. I didn't fight back. The blows landed hard, but I stood tall, letting him tire himself out. Finally, another guard pulled him away, but not before the entire scene had been captured for the record. In the infirmary, Beth, the nurse, greeted me with a knowing smile. "Trouble again?" she asked as she began cleaning my wounds. "I didn't fight. He just started hitting me," I explained. "Well, there'll be an investigation this time. He'll likely lose his job," she replied while bandaging me. "One less corrupt guard," I muttered. Beth sighed. "Guards are here to protect you, whether you believe it or not. They failed last time." "He let it happen," I shot back, my tone sharp. Beth said nothing more, but her expression softened as she kept me overnight for observation. Meanwhile, the suspended guard's partner glared at me every time he passed, his silence telling me my message had landed exactly where it needed to. Weeks passed without a single visit from Gina. When Ken finally came with news, his face was grim. "Lily's refusing to bring her," he informed me. That lit a fire in me. My ex-wife wasn't just bleeding me dry. She was now keeping my daughter from me. My determination to fight burned hotter than ever. At the end of the month, Lily finally relented, dragging Gina along for a visit. I watched from the visiting room as my daughter refused to get out of the car until Lily gave in. When they entered, Lily's fury was palpable. "Your daughter's impossible," she hissed as she sat down across from me. "She barely speaks to me and is just as stubborn as you." "You said that last time," I replied evenly. "Why not ask the judge to give her to me? I'd gladly take her." "You're not getting her," Lily shot back. "She needs a good education to succeed. Oak Forest has good schools, and she loved it there," I countered. "Wilmette's better," Lily insisted. "She's meeting people who can help her future. Our daughter will make her own future without riding anyone's coattails," I said firmly, locking eyes with her. Lily's tone sharpened. "You're so stubborn you can't see the benefits." I sighed, tired of the endless argument. "Lily, we've had this conversation too many times. You're not changing my mind, and I'm not changing yours. So why are you here? I know it's not to bring Gina to me." "Her name is Regina, not Gina," Lily corrected coldly. "That's not what she wants to be called," I replied pointedly. "Don't you want her to think for herself?" "You mean be stubborn?" Lily retorted. "No," I said, "independent. Strong enough to make her own decisions, not just follow someone with money or power." Lily smirked, recognizing the jab. "I need spousal support," she said abruptly. "I have bills to pay." "You'll have to figure that out yourself," I said calmly. "No paycheck for me means no payments." "What? I can't cover the bills with my income," she exclaimed. "Maybe you should have thought of that before dragging me to court," I replied icily. You made things worse, paying me in coins, she snapped. And now you're getting nothing because I'm in jail, I said matter-of-factly. You have to pay, she yelled, her voice echoing through the room. No, I don't. What can they do? Jail me again? I'm already here, I said coolly. Fuming, Lily stormed out. A moment later, Gina entered the room, her grin lighting up my world. You really pissed her off, she said, clearly amused. She expects me to pay support from jail. Good luck with that, I replied. How are you doing, Dad? She asked, her voice softening. I'm fine. How about you? Still not talking to your mom? Only when I have to, Gina admitted. She hesitated before adding, When are you getting out? I'm not apologizing to that judge unless he gives you back to me. That's not happening, so I'll be here for 6 months. Gina nodded sadly but smiled through her disappointment. If a man has no principles, he has nothing, she said, quoting Lincoln. Her words hit me harder than any guard's fists ever could. Thank you, dear, I said, smiling warmly at Gina. You always know how to cheer me up. Spending time with my daughter was a rare joy, and I cherished every moment. Missing her birthday would be tough for both of us, but I knew she'd handle it. She was strong, just like her old man. The following week brought some unexpected satisfaction. The guard who had laid hands on me was fired, thanks to the video evidence showing I didn't even defend myself. A few days later, his partner either quit or was quietly transferred. Either way, he was gone. The inmates noticed, and a few even thanked me for ridding the prison of their corruption. The nickname Tex had gained traction, and I found myself garnering a level of respect among the other prisoners. The Sixes, however, weren't quite as appreciative. I heard through the grapevine that one of their wives had filed for divorce, while 3 others had been dumped by their girlfriends. Perhaps even idiots could learn. With my increased standing and the lingering threat of retaliation, the Sixes kept their distance. A couple of weeks later, I was served a subpoena to meet the judge via video conference. When the guard arrived to escort me, I crossed my arms and refused. I'm not meeting with the judge without my lawyer, I stated firmly. But the judge is waiting, the guard said, taken aback. I don't care. Reschedule it, I replied. My schedule's open. After some hesitation, the guard walked off, clearly frustrated. 3 days later, they informed me the meeting had been reset for the following week. I requested 30 minutes with my lawyer beforehand, which they begrudgingly allowed. When the day arrived, my lawyer admitted he hadn't been briefed on the meeting's purpose. Strange, he remarked, but I guess we'll figure it out. The screen flickered to life, revealing the judge's scowling face. His irritation at the delay was evident, but I couldn't care less. To me, he was just another egotistical figure hiding behind a robe. My lawyer began diplomatically. Your Honor, may I ask the purpose of this meeting? We weren't provided any details. The judge's voice dripped with disdain. Your client didn't need you. I simply wanted to see if he was ready to apologize to the court for his previous outburst. My lawyer glanced at me, and I leaned in, whispering my response. With a slight smirk, he turned back to the judge. Your Honor, my client is not willing to apologize and believes the court owes him an apology instead. He also requests primary custody of his child. The judge's expression froze in disbelief. Why would I apologize to him? Of course, he wouldn't do that. My custody decision stands, and I have no apology to make. Then we're wasting time, my lawyer said evenly. If my client changes his mind, we'll let the court know. Good day. Wait, the judge interrupted. One more thing. I braced myself. Here it comes, the real reason for this meeting. Your client isn't honoring the divorce decree, the judge said. When does he plan to make the spousal support and mortgage payments? My lawyer turned to me, and I whispered my reply. Your Honor, he said smoothly, my client has no intention of making any payments while incarcerated. But the house will be foreclosed on, the judge countered, his tone sharpening. It's not my house, I said bluntly, leaning toward the camera. Maybe it's my ex-wife's mansion, but not mine. I never wanted it. The judge's face darkened. It will destroy your credit and cost you all your equity, he warned. A small price, I replied with a smirk, to see my favorite ex-wife walking the streets where she belongs. Maybe her buddies can pool their resources and cover the payments. The insinuation wasn't lost on him, and his face contorted with rage. You worthless Southside scum, he spat. Who do you think you're talking to? Calmly, I delivered the finishing blow. I think I'm talking to the man who enjoyed my wife's company. If I'm wrong, I apologize. I just don't see why anyone uninvolved would care so much. I stood, signaling the conversation was over. As the guard escorted me back to my cell, the judge's voice thundered behind me. Counselor, your client just earned 2 more months in jail. If he keeps disrespecting me, I'll make his life a living hell. The guard's expression was priceless, a mix of shock and awe. I couldn't help but smile. Back in my cell, the realization hit me like a freight train. Lily had been discussing the mortgage with her friends, and somehow, that information had reached the judge. It all fit together too perfectly. But their games wouldn't last forever. Their time would come. The following Sunday, Lily visited me in jail, and to my relief, Gina insisted on coming along. I heard you pissed off the judge again and got 2 more months, Lily began, her tone sharp. When are you going to learn you can't fight the system? All I care about is seeing Gina, I replied coldly. It's Regina, Lily snapped. I'll call her what she wants to be called, I said, turning away as Lily stormed out, slamming the door. Moments later, Gina walked in, her face glowing with a mischievous smile. Why are you so happy? It says, raising an eyebrow. Because I'm going to see my daddy, she replied brightly. Then, leaning back in her chair, she grinned. I have a surprise for you, but I can't tell you about it yet. What are you up to, Gina? I teased. She unfolded a piece of paper and held it out. Will you sign this without reading it first? I hesitated, then smiled. With my life. Her grin widened as she tucked the paper away. Whatever she was planning, I trusted her completely. It's a surprise, Gina insisted, her smile widening. I let it go for now, deciding not to press her further. Changing the subject, I sighed softly. I'm sorry I won't be there for your 16th birthday, I said, my voice heavy with regret. But the next time you visit, I'll have a present for you. Her eyes sparkled with excitement. What is it? She asked eagerly. It's a surprise, I said, mirroring her playful tone. I guess we're both keeping secrets. She stood to leave but hesitated as I called after her. Can you do me a favor and ask Greg to visit me? I need to talk to him about something important. Of course, Daddy, she said warmly, before heading out. Greg had been my trusted point man for handling business matters before my incarceration, and there was one more task I needed him to take on, organizing a surprise birthday party for Gina. A few days later, Greg arrived for a visit, updating me on the critical cases I'd left him to manage. He had done well, keeping everything running smoothly. After business talk, I shifted gears. I want to throw Gina a surprise birthday party, I said. Greg raised an eyebrow. Are you sure? Considering the circumstances? Absolutely, I replied without hesitation. It's perfect for her. He nodded thoughtfully. All right, I'll make it happen. I'll also talk to our lawyer about the details. And visit Ken, I added. Give him what I've prepared. He'll know what to do, and if he has questions, he can come to me. If not, send him to Gummy. Greg smirked knowingly. Sounds good. Gummy, one of my oldest allies, understood how my mind worked and could be trusted to execute plans without a hitch. I felt confident leaving things in his hands while I stayed guilt-free behind bars. By the end of the month, my reputation among the inmates had soared. The story of my showdown with the judge had spread like wildfire, thanks to a guard's loose tongue. Everyone was calling me Tex now, a nickname that had become synonymous with respect. Toward the month's end, another visitor arrived. When I stepped into the visitation room and saw Lily waiting, my stomach churned with annoyance. I turned to leave, but her voice stopped me. Kurt, please wait. I need to talk to you, she said, her tone unusually earnest. I have nothing to say to you, Lily, I replied coldly. She ignored my protest and pressed on. We're going to lose the house. You have to give me money to stop the foreclosure. I stared at her, unmoving. This is your house, Lily. I never wanted it. You nagged me until I gave in. And now it's nothing but a financial sinkhole. It means nothing to me. But it'll ruin your credit, she cried, desperation cracking her voice. I've always paid cash for everything I replied icily. Credit means nothing to me. Let the bank take it. Tears welled in her eyes. Why are you doing this to me? Why did you lie to the judge and accuse me of maltreating our daughter? I fired back. Her face turned pale, and for a moment she was utterly still. Then, as the weight of her actions hit her, tears streamed down her cheeks. Without another word, I turned and walked away, relief washing over me. As the guard escorted me back, his radio crackled. Take him back to visitation, came the instruction. Expecting to see Lily still sobbing, I was surprised to find Gina waiting for me instead. Gina, I said, startled. Your mom didn't mention bringing you. She didn't bring me, Gina replied with a shrug. I wouldn't let her come here without me. I smiled, grateful. I'm sorry I missed your birthday, I said, but I have a gift for you. Dad, she said softly, I knew you'd miss it, and I don't care. I love you anyway. You don't have to get me anything. Pride swelled in my chest. I don't have the gift here, I admitted. And it's not immediate, but I can tell you what it is. Gina, the house in Oak Forest is yours. It'll go into a trust for you when you turn 18. Her eyes widened with excitement. When I get out of here, she asked eagerly, can I stay there? Of course, I said with a grin. I'll even pay the rent. Her laughter filled the room. Daddy, oh my God, she exclaimed. You just removed a huge obstacle for my surprise. What surprise? I asked, intrigued. I still can't tell you, she teased, but you'll understand when I do. I love you so much. I love you too, honey, I replied, my heart full as I watched her smile. A few days later, Gummy came to visit. Everything was set. The hidden cameras we'd placed in the law firm had captured enough evidence to topple careers. Lawyers, politicians, and even a certain judge caught in compromising situations. Their arrogance had made them careless, and they'd underestimated the power of someone willing to play the long game. My brother would anonymously release the footage with the tagline, "Don't mess with Texas." The videos would go viral, sparking a media frenzy and throwing their lives into chaos. As Gummy laid out the plan, I couldn't help but smile. In a week, let the others know what to do next, I said. Will do, Gummy replied. Back in my cell, my grin lingered. When the tapes were released, the prison buzzed with murmurs. Even here in the shadows of society, news traveled fast. Inmates whispered the now famous phrase, "Don't mess with Texas." One of the sixes entered my cell not long after, his face pale and his hands trembling. Let's talk, he said. He was a huge guy, towering over me, but his nervous energy betrayed him. You're a bad fool, he muttered, looking at the floor. I'm sorry for what I did to you. I stayed calm, my voice steady as I replied. I warned you all not to mess with me. I respond to kindness with kindness and violence with violence. People are learning to regret crossing me. The man nodded, his face tight with discomfort. I hope you'll accept my apology. Sure, I said, leaning back. But remember, just because you're big doesn't mean you can't hurt yourself. He nodded again and left, his broad shoulders slumping slightly as he disappeared down the corridor. 3 days later, I was summoned before the judge once more. My lawyer had already been contacted and was en route. Sitting in the video room, waiting for the connection, he smirked. Wonder what this is about. Time will tell, I replied with a matching smirk. When the judge's face filled the screen, his expression was one of barely contained fury. You did it, he shouted, his voice shaking with rage. Did what? I asked evenly, keeping my tone steady. You're Tex, aren't you? He bellowed. Some people call me that, I replied with a calm shrug. You're going to pay for this, he snarled. I didn't flinch. Your Honor, I've been in jail for 4 months. How could I have done anything? You have friends, he hissed. We all have friends, Your Honor, I said, letting a trace of sarcasm seep into my voice. You're not getting away with this, he spat. I don't know, I said coolly, leaning forward slightly. I hear your wife's divorcing you. Maybe you're the one who won't be getting away with things. Call off your dogs, he demanded, his face contorting with rage. Calling my friends dogs? I said, raising an eyebrow. They might not appreciate that. Corner a dog, and you might get bitten. Is that a threat? He asked, his voice rising. No, I replied, my tone calm. Just a saying. I'll make your life a living hell, he growled. When you leave this filthy prison, you'd better watch your back. One day someone will make you pay, and I'll be thrilled to see it happen. Abruptly, he ended the call. I turned to my lawyer, who was already holding up his phone with a sly grin. Did you get that? I asked. Every word, he replied. The Bar Association will love this. Last I checked, intimidation is still a crime in Illinois. A few days later, Lily showed up for another visit. The sight of her soured my mood instantly. Oh, it's you, I said flatly. I thought I made it clear I have nothing more to say to you. You fool, she yelled, her voice trembling with fury. You got me fired. My picture's all over the news and the internet. How could you do this to me? You did it to yourself, I said coldly. Do you hate me that much? She asked, her voice breaking. Yeah, I replied bluntly, and your arrogant law buddies, who think they're above everyone else. When we first met, you were a sweet small-town girl with a great personality. Now you're just a selfish uptown witch. Tears filled her eyes as her voice cracked. What am I going to do? I don't have a job, and no one will hire me. I leaned forward, locking eyes with her. Move back to Seymour and stay with your folks? I can't, she stammered. The local paper ran a headline. Local girl at center of Chicago scandal. My parents are retiring early and moving to Florida to avoid the gossip. Well, I said, my tone sharp, Florida sounds like the perfect place for you, farther away from me. They don't want me there, she whispered, her voice breaking. They barely even talk to me anymore. Wow, I said with mock surprise. Your parents barely talk to you. Your daughter barely talks to you. Maybe the problem is you. Her face crumpled, but I pressed on. I think you should move and start over. But don't even think about taking Gina with you. As soon as I'm out of here, I'll petition for primary custody. With your reputation, I'm pretty sure the court will rethink who's the better influence for a teenage girl. You can't do that, she pleaded. She's all I have left. Lily, I don't care, I said, my voice cold. You did this to yourself. We had a good life, but then you decided to have fun with everyone. I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. Here's an idea. You could work as a strump for one of your lawyer buddies. I bet there's still a market for a nearly 40-year-old. Her composure shattered. Tears streamed down her face as she broke down, resting her forehead on the table. I felt no sympathy. Did you bring Gina? I asked. It's Regina, she snapped. And no, she's busy with that doctor friend of hers. Well, I said, standing up, then I've got nothing more to say to you. Don't bother coming back unless you bring Gina. Without another glance, I walked away, leaving her sobbing at the table. Strangely, for the first time, the sight of her broken didn't bring me any satisfaction. It left me feeling hollow. The next day, the news reported that a fire had gutted the top floor of a 5-story office building downtown. The sprinklers saved the lower levels, but the upper floors were completely destroyed. I just smiled. The following day, Ken informed me that the law firm's external server had crashed, erasing all their data. Again, I smiled. A couple of weeks later, Gina came to visit, her face glowing with the biggest smile I'd ever seen. Gina, I said, my mood lifting, you look so happy. What's going on? I finally finished my surprise for you, she exclaimed, her excitement bubbling over. I chuckled. Well, based on our last conversation, it has something to do with the Oak Forest house. You're half right, she teased, her grin growing wider. What do you mean? I asked, frowning slightly. Mom's being evicted from the Wilmette house, she explained, and I'm moving into the Oak Forest house. I blinked in surprise. How can you do that? The court gave her primary custody until you're of age. Her eyes sparkled with pride. I'm legally an adult now, she said triumphantly. Wait, what? I asked, completely stunned. I got emancipated, she said, beaming. That's what Alex and I have been working on for the past 2 months. Once you put the house in trust, everything fell into place. I needed a stable place to live, and our old neighborhood is perfect for me. So, let me get this straight, I said, still processing. You're officially an adult now? Exactly, she said. Now, once you're out of here, you can come home. I'm excited to go back to high school in Oak Forest, Gina said, her enthusiasm lighting up the room. I've already reconnected with old friends, and they can't wait for summer to end so school can start. Her excitement was infectious, but a lingering thought tugged at me. I heard you've been spending time with a counselor, I said, still suspicious of the mysterious Alex. I'd like to meet this Alex guy. You're in luck, Gina said with a grin. Alex brought me here today. My concern deepened. This Alex wasn't just a counselor. He was driving Gina around Chicago. I didn't want to upset her, but I needed to make it clear to this person that boundaries were not optional. When Gina returned to the room, my expectations were flipped. Instead of the man I'd pictured, a striking woman with raven black hair walked in behind her. She smiled warmly and asked, "How are you doing?" I studied her closely, something about her features sparking a distant memory. "Freddie?" I asked, astonished. She smirked knowingly. "I haven't heard that name in 20 years." Freddie, now Alexandria, had been a familiar face from my old neighborhood. We weren't close, but her presence in this new context took me by surprise. Gina looked between us, puzzled. "Daddy, how do you know Dr. Hodges?" Alex answered before I could. "We grew up in the same neighborhood, but he barely noticed me." Turning to Gina, I explained, "She was a couple of years behind me in school. We didn't really hang out." "And you were a juvenile delinquent," Alex added with a teasing smile. "Looks like some things never change. You're in your 40s now, and you're still behind bars." I felt my face flush, caught off guard by her candor. "I've never been good at keeping my mouth shut," I admitted. "Clearly," she teased. "I hear people call you Tex now, don't they?" "Why do you call him that?" Gina asked, her curiosity piqued. "That was his nickname as a teenager," Alex explained. "He always got even when someone crossed him. Your mom did something terrible to him, and judging by the news about the law firm, I'm betting Tex had a hand in that." "It's Gina," my daughter corrected. "Right, Gina," Alex said, nodding before turning back to me. "When I started working with her about 9 months ago, she was deeply upset about everything happening in her life. At first, I wondered if she was related to you and Ken, since D'Angelo isn't a common last name. When I found out her dad's name was Kurt, I still wasn't sure, until she mentioned you were in prison. Then I knew it had to be you." Alex paused, her tone softening. "I felt awful, but I figured you'd turned things around since you had a house in Wilmette." "It's just a house," I said flatly. "It was never a home." Gina chimed in, her voice firm. "Our real home is in Oak Forest. South Side, but a much better area than where we grew up," Alex added. "Yeah," I agreed, feeling a twinge of regret. "If we'd stayed there, maybe things would have turned out differently." For a moment, we were all lost in thought before the conversation picked up again. Later, I pulled Alex aside and said, "I really appreciate you taking time away from your family to help Gina. Thank you for guiding her through emancipation. It's made such a difference." "It's no problem, Tex," she said with a smile. "She's like family to me. I've grown really attached to her." "Thanks again," I said. "When I get out of here, we'll all go out to dinner." "I'll hold you to that, if you ever get out," she replied playfully. The next couple of weeks passed uneventfully. Gina and Alex continued visiting me every Sunday, and I felt a sense of relief knowing Alex was looking out for her. During one visit, Gina mentioned Alex was helping her decorate the Oak Forest house with new furniture and decorations. "Where's the money coming from?" I asked curiously. "From Uncle Ken, of course," Gina replied. "I've got money set aside for what I need." "Right," I said, nodding. "I just wanted to make sure Freddie wasn't paying for anything. She's done so much for us already, but this is something I needed to handle." "Don't worry, Dad," Gina reassured me. "It's all taken care of." "I just hope it's not all girly stuff in there," I teased. "I'd like to feel at home, too." She laughed. "Don't worry. Your man cave is still a man cave." The basement had been my sanctuary, a private retreat in a house full of women. It was comforting to know she'd preserved it. The following Monday, another visitor arrived. Lily. The moment I saw her, I turned to leave. "Kurt, wait!" she called after me. "Oh, we need to talk." Reluctantly, I stopped and turned back. "What now?" "Do you know what our daughter did?" she asked, her tone accusatory. "What are you talking about, Lily?" I said, wary. "She got emancipated," Lily exclaimed. "She doesn't have to live with us anymore. She's already moved out, and I don't know where she is." "Oh, that," I said, shrugging nonchalantly. "So you knew," she said, narrowing her eyes. "Did you encourage her to do it?" "No," I replied calmly. "She did it herself, with help from her school counselor." "Is she staying with the counselor?" Lily pressed. "No, she's back home on the south side," I said. "What about school?" Lily demanded, her voice rising in frustration. "She'll return to Oak Forest in the fall," I said. She hated Wilmette. They treated her like an outsider, a kid from the projects as they called it. You took her away from a school she loved, where she had good friends, and placed her in an environment that hurt her self-esteem and gave her an inferiority complex. You caused more damage than good. Lily's face twisted in frustration. I was trying to give her a better life, she snapped. A better life? I said, my voice calm but sharp. You wanted her to live your life. You cared more about appearances than her happiness. Gina isn't you, Lily. She didn't belong in Wilmette, and deep down, you knew it. She's my daughter, too, Lily fired back, her voice trembling. You have no right to judge me. I'm not judging, I replied coolly. I'm stating facts. You uprooted her, ignored her misery, and pushed her into a world she didn't fit into, all to feed your ego. Now, she's back where she belongs, thriving. That's what matters. Lily stared at me, her eyes wide with hurt and confusion. For a moment, I thought she might argue further, but instead, she sighed and sat down heavily. I don't know what to do anymore, she said quietly. She's my only family left, and now she doesn't want me in her life. That's something you need to work on, I said firmly. But you're not going to fix it by forcing her to fit into your mold. Start by listening to her. Respect her decisions. Lily shook her head, tears streaming down her face. She won't even talk to me. What am I supposed to do? Give her time, I said, softening my tone just slightly. And stop trying to control her. Let her come to you. The conversation lingered in my mind long after Lily left. I couldn't deny feeling a mix of pity and frustration toward her. She had dug this hole herself, but it was clear she had no idea how to climb out. The next Sunday, Gina arrived for her regular visit, her face lighting up as soon as she saw me. Hi, Daddy, she said brightly, her energy like a ray of sunshine in the dreary visitation room. Hi, sweetheart, I replied, my own mood lifting instantly. How's the house coming along? It's amazing, she gushed. Alex has been helping me pick out furniture and decorations. It's really starting to feel like home again. Good, I said with a smile. But make sure you're not turning the whole place into a girly paradise. She laughed. Don't worry, your man cave is untouched. Perfect, I said, leaning back in my chair. And school? Are you ready to start back in Oak Forest? Absolutely, she said, her grin widening. I can't wait to see all my friends again. Everyone's so excited that I'm back. As she talked about her plans, I couldn't help but marvel at how much she'd grown. She was no longer a little girl, but a confident, capable young woman charting her own path. The next few weeks passed in relative calm. Gina's visits remained the highlight of my days, and her updates about the house and her plans for school kept my spirits high. I was still haunted by occasional run-ins with Lily, who continued to flail in the chaos of her unraveling life. But I kept my focus on what mattered, Gina and our future. Then, one afternoon, Ken came to visit, his face serious. We've got a problem, he said, sitting across from me. What's going on? I asked, my stomach nodding. Someone's sniffing around, he said quietly, asking questions about the tapes. Who? I demanded. Some investigator, Ken replied, hired by one of the politicians who got burned. I clenched my fists under the table, my mind racing. Are they getting close? Not yet, Ken said, his tone cautious. But they're persistent. I exhaled slowly, forcing myself to stay calm. We planned for this, I said firmly. We have layers of protection. Stick to the plan. Ken nodded. I'll handle it. Just wanted to keep you in the loop. Good, I said, my jaw tightening. And Ken, be careful. He gave me a grim smile. Always. That night, lying on my bunk, I replayed the conversation in my head. The tapes had done their job, exposing the corruption and arrogance of those who thought themselves untouchable. But with that exposure came risks. I'd known there would be fallout, and I was prepared to deal with it. Still, the thought of Gina or anyone else getting caught in the crossfire filled me with unease. As the days turned into weeks, I noticed a shift in the prison's atmosphere. Inmates who once treated me with indifference now showed deference, their whispers carrying the weight of my reputation. Even the guards seemed wary, their gazes lingering just a moment longer when they passed me. The power dynamics had changed, and I was no longer just another inmate. I was Tex, the man who had taken on the system and won, at least for now. The following Sunday, Gina's visit brought a welcome distraction. She was bursting with excitement, her eyes sparkling as she sat down across from me. What's got you so happy? I asked, amused by her energy. I have big news, she said, barely able to contain herself. But I can't tell you yet. Not this again, I teased. You're always keeping me in suspense. You'll understand soon enough, she said, her grin widening. Just wait. I shook my head, smiling despite myself. Whatever she was planning, I knew it would be worth the wait.